Hello guys, welcome back to my channel as PTK. Today we'll discuss more about inheritance on Python. So, if you don't know what inheritance means, please go to my previous video about OOPS concept. If for some revising, let's discuss about inheritance. Inheritance means the transfer of the characteristics of a class to another classes that are derived from it. In general, inheritance is the mechanism of deriving new classes from existing ones. By doing this, we get the hierarchy of classes. In most classes-based object-oriented languages, an object created through inheritance, a child object acquires all. There are mainly four types of inheritance. That is single inheritance or single level inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, multiple inheritance. To create a parent class, and that is any class is called parent class. So the syntax is same by creating any other class. First we have to give the class keyword, that is normal, the class name. Remember to specify a colon right here, statement 1, and give any more number of statements. Let me say Python inheritance terminologies. Superclass means the class from which attributes and methods are getting inherited. So which that is getting inherited. Subclass means it's a class that is inheriting from the superclass. So superclass means that is getting inherited from. Subclass is the class that is inheriting from. Method overriding, meaning the meaning is a subclass it is just changing it's modifying the parent class by the child class. Let me give an example. Create a class with person details with name and age properties and a display details method. If you don't know what a method means, a method means that a function but in the body of a class is called a method. I'm going to create a parent class or a base class or superclass. We can call parent class in two more ways: base class, superclass. And child class is derived class, subclass. So I use the class keyword. I gave the class name person details. I specified a colon. I gave the constructor init function. How to write is 2 underscores. You can see here 2 underscores init and again 2 underscores. I kept the self parameter. Self parameter is the class itself. I added 2 more parameters: the person name, the person age. Self.name is person name. Self.age is person's age. I created a function named display details and used the self keyword on it. Return self.name, self.age. Here, if you simply execute this without giving this code, it wouldn't execute nothing, as we give the return keyword that will return it. So I'm going to use the person details class to create an object that will execute the display details method. So I give an object x equals x and I give equals person details, that is the class. So to create an object is the name, the equal operator and the class name, and remember parent is. So I give some parameters in it, Kartik and 10. I gave a variable in per name age that is equal to x dot display details and parent is. And so I'm going to execute person details, that is not person details, I just gave in quotes, and I'm going to execute per name age. So I execute it. Let me execute it. Okay, personal details as here. If I have executed, I give a next name, new line so that it will come in another line, and per name age. So because x is equal to person details and self dot name here, self dot name and self dot age, and I executed it because per name x has the like this. I gave and print per name age variable and x dot display details. So it has Karthik and 10. So it will come that the name self dot name is Karthik, self dot age is 10. So if I executed it, it became Karthik and 10. Remember that. Create a subclass, child class or derived class. To create a class that inherits the functionality from another class, send the parent class as parameter. When creating the child class, inheritance syntax is class, the subclass name, and in parentheses, remember when we creating a class we won't give any parentheses, but here for inheritance you have to give parentheses and give the parent class, or if you want to give more than one parent class you have to give specify this commas, and you have to end it with a parenthesis, and how we make a class is ended with a colon, so give a colon, and the body of the derived class. That's it. So I'm going to create a derived class or subclass or a child class. So I'm going to create a class named student, and in parentheses I'm giving the class name person details. So here person details become a parent class, student become a child class. So parentheses and I gave a colon, student ID equal to, but I gave nothing as value, just these quotes, and I gave the init constructor here and gave the 3 more parameters: student name, student age, student ID. But here at the second line, I took the person details init function as it, and using the student name, student age. So it is initiating the superclass constructor, as I said, and I created a method named display ID self print student ID in quotes and give self dot student ID. So I'm going to use a student class to create an object for the child class and execute the display method. Display ID method. I'm going to create a variable, the object name stu with the 3 parameters Gurusai 10 and 405. So it gives Gurusai as a student name, 10 as student age, and 405 as a student ID. That is a create object. Stu.display ID. That means we're using the object on the method. Display student ID from the subclass. So if I do print keep a new line name and age, then stu.display details will display the details at Gurusai 10 405. But remember when I executed here, see as I executed, because I executed 405 at first, so it executed 405. Student name and age, it came Gurusai and 10. It came like that because display ID. Here I kept name and the age. It's taking the name and the age from the super class, also called as the parent class or base class. The 4 types of inheritance, as I said: single level, multi-level, hierarchical hierarchical inheritance and multiple inheritance. Single level inheritance is what we done in now about a student class. Let me show you. A single level inheritance means the base class, it has the base class features only, but the derived class has a base class and the the derived class features. the super function. Python also has a function, super function, that built-in returns a proxy object or temporary object of a superclass. Super method will make the child class inherit all the methods and properties from its parent. For example, here is the parent class and here is the child class. But when we're inheriting, it came here, but here there's a wall to not make it go. So we use a super function so that it will inherit from here. So the parent class can view it. So it will inherit from here. And a parent class will get inherited from here. Always better to use a built-in super function. So super function in it, student name, student age, is equivalent to person details in itself, student name, student age, and is preferred. Let me show you an example. I'm going to create the same class student and use person details. Student ID equals quote, because nothing. I created a function. I remember I used the instructor, a constructor, and use self, and student name, student age, and student ID I added as the parameters. Instead of giving person details, instead I give super func. I use a super method and give inner student name, student age, and more. So there's no self parameter. There's no self parameter here. Self plus student ID equals student ID. So this self, it is coming to the super function, and if we are executing, we're keeping to we are inheriting from the super class. So student name and age. So it's coming to the student class now. Display. I created a method named display ID self. Print self dot student ID. So it will, when I give this, it will execute self dot the student ID, and I'm going to create a method display student. It will print student name and age super as the super class, display your details, and student ID self dot student ID. I'm going to use the student class to create an object for the child class and then execute the display method. So 2 is here, an object equals student as the class name, and give parameters Gurusai 10 and 405. 2 dot display ID, 2 dot display details. Now if I execute it, here student name and age Gurusai 10, student ID 4, because here due to the display ID, and when I execute Gurusai and 10 as student name and student age because of display student. Multi-level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance is achieved when a derived class inherits another derived class. For example, you can inherit a derived class from another derived class. And that means child class can be inherited from another child class. This is known as multi-level inheritance. So it will be like grandparent, parent, and child. So parent class and then a child class that's inheriting from it, and then it will become the parent class for the child class, another child class that is getting inherited from.